The Metalfish T40 needs a retry. The last build didn't do this case justice, and now that some new parts have come out, some small cards with low power consumption, I can come back to this and make something really nice. And while I don't really need an excuse to do this, my brother got a free hotel stay in Vegas on the weekend of EVO, and since we were all excited about playing fighting games, I thought this is a good chance to build a small computer and maybe take it with us to play some games in our hotel. This time I chose the Ryzen 7 7800X3D, partly again because I already have it, and I didn't want to buy something new, but also because it's a great choice for an ITX PC. A Ryzen 5 7600 would have been a more appropriate choice probably, but this one gets some extra grunt because it has 8 instead of 6 cores, and in some games it'll still perform better even with a lower video card because of that 3D V-cache. The 7800X3D also uses very little power to game, which can't be said for the more expensive 9800X3D unless you also set some power limits, which would probably drag down the performance closer to the 7800X3D, which is still very high performing anyway. Also, I noticed that on this motherboard, the 9800X3D gave me some coil whine where the 7800X3D did not. Coil whine is an interesting topic though because it's hard to say for sure if any specific combination of parts will cause it. I might investigate that more later. The GPU I chose was the PowerColor Reaper 9060 XT 16GB. Let's set PowerColor's cringy, edgy naming aside because it was the smallest 9060 XT I could get my hands on. There are no 5060 Ti 16GB cards that I could buy locally anyway that would fit in the T40 without a slight modification to the case. You have to shave off this little nub that helps keep the side panels from warping to get the Gigabyte Windforce 2 fan card to fit in the case. The next best option was the single fan or low profile versions of the RTX 5060 8GB. The complaints about low VRAM are a little out of control lately, but the point is still valid and I wanted 16GB in this PC. What's nice about these small cards though is that they only take a single 8-pin PCI Express power connector, which is perfect for my still legendary OG Corsair SF750 Platinum and a bunch of other widely available SFX power supplies that are out there. You do not need any new connectors or really high capacity for a build like this. Its maximum load, this SF750, is actually about 3 times what this build is going to draw. I've installed it with the fan facing inward because if that fan ever does turn on, it will be pulling warm air out of the case. A long time ago, it was very common for people to use the power supply as an exhaust. Today, everyone wants fresh air for every part. I'm not worried about running hot air through a power supply at all. It can take it, and it'll help the other parts stay cooler. Well, at least it can take it in a build like this. If you're running a 5090 or something, I wouldn't probably do that. Again though, with such a small load, that fan may never turn on. The rest of the parts in the build are pretty average. For maximum balance and cost optimization, I would probably go for that Ryzen 7600 and maybe a 500 watt SFX power supply with a fan that stays on so that it's automatically always drawing hot air out of the system. I did make some minor changes to the case. I replaced the handle since the original came scratched and dented, literally, and bought new feet since the originals had sharp edges and felt cheap. The new handle is just a drawer pull from Amazon, but that's probably what Metalfish is using, so why not? The handle included screws that were way too long, but the original Metalfish screws were the same thread, so they fit. If you run into a situation where you've got the wrong screw size, just head to your local hardware store. Screw threads are standardized, so you'll likely be able to find exactly what you need. Or you could also just cut off the extra length with a hacksaw or a rotary tool. The new feet kind of sucked though, so I sent them back and got a refund. They were solid machined aluminum, and they did feel much better than the originals, but the bottom cushion part was just a press-fit O-ring. They did dampen vibration a little bit, and that was fine, but they would stick to surfaces and get pulled out of the feet. Then when you move the case, if you didn't notice that part fell out and set the case down, the sharp metal edge of the feet was touching your surface at kind of an angle, and you could scratch the surface, which defeats half the purpose of the feet in the first place. So, yeah, they were no good. They had to go, and I switched the feet back to the originals. I also added this extension cable for a fan. It's actually 2 cables since one wasn't long enough. It's zip tied to the back so that I could add a fan to the top without having to drill holes in the case, and I could optionally remove it, so there's just a connector right there. A 120mm fan was a pain to place up there, and neither the 120 or 92mm fans aligned with the holes well enough to screw them down very well. Even if I could, listen to the noise that the 92mm fan produces when it's set up as an exhaust on the top. I thought the fan noise might be caused by the fan blades passing too near the hexagon hole pattern, but since it remains even at a short distance, it might also just be air turbulence. Either way, if I find a solution to that, I'll implement the fan. But when I played games on this computer, I didn't feel like the computer was getting too noisy or too hot, so I might just scrap that idea altogether. It's not really high on the priority list right now. For an OS, I installed Ubuntu. Windows just keeps transforming more and more into spyware, and the Ubuntu experience is pretty clean and trouble-free. While I mostly like what I've seen with Bazite so far, I have run into a few issues in the past with testing it, and I didn't want to be troubleshooting it on this trip. I've used Ubuntu as a daily driver for a long time, so I was more comfortable getting that set up right from the start. At 4K, fighting games like Street Fighter 6 ran flawlessly on this PC. The experience was great and everything was smooth. Tekken 8 ran with everything maxed out and no resolution scaling at 60 frames per second and 4K for the normal part of fights, but during Rage Arts it would take a dip into the 40s. Upscaling from a lower resolution with XESS or FSR solved that, and still lets you play at maximum graphical settings, just at a slightly faker 4K. Control struggled a bit with ray tracing on. I tested at 1440p maximum raster settings and just varied the ray tracing a little bit. It was still totally playable without ray tracing on this card at 1440p. I wouldn't expect a great experience at 4K though. This would be more like a 1080p or a 1440p kind of game. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth performed really well on this system, getting a pretty smooth experience around 60 frames per second with maximum settings at 1440p was kind of surprising actually. It feels like a better experience than on Windows 2. Maybe a little smoother, it's hard to say. I used Calm as a test because it's a demanding area with a lot going on. If you're willing to turn on the resolution scaling or you want to play with Optiscaler, you can probably get an even better experience. But I liked it, and it was definitely better than the base PS5. I don't have any hard test data to show you, but I'll share a few things about my experience gaming on Linux because I've been doing it for a while. Most games just work, because mostly of Valve's effort with Proton and DXVK and Wine and those kinds of things. You will have some issues with games that use invasive or incompatible versions of anti-cheat software, and some won't run at all. Dragon Ball FighterZ would not boot, for instance, and that's a very fun game. On an AMD card, you basically just install your version of Linux and play. With NVIDIA, you may have to fight with drivers a bit, and I've had issues with some games with this combination of Proton and Wine and all this kind of stuff on Steam, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for the longest time had an issue where the terrain and static objects wouldn't load with an NVIDIA card installed, and that was pretty annoying. I've also found that NVIDIA takes a noticeable hit to performance compared to Windows, but AMD seems to be mixed. Some games might actually perform better and others worse. So, it's it's hard to tell. I totally recommend checking out Ancient Gameplay's channel because he tests a lot of AMD stuff, and lately, like in the past 6 months, he's put out a couple Linux gaming videos with some performance charts. And you can get a good idea of what some games are going to perform like comparing Windows to Linux. Now, after building this awesome tiny system, you might be surprised to find out that we didn't even take it with us. Even though the case is only 7.5 liters, you still need a keyboard, a mouse, some controllers maybe, and a bunch of cables. It was a lot to pack, and we were only taking carry-on luggage, so we decided to go without it. Neither of us are interested in drinking, gambling, shows, or any of the seedy stuff in Las Vegas, so we thought we might have a lot of time to kill in this hotel. But it turned out we found other things to do. We drove out to the Hoover Dam. We explored Death Valley, which was awesome. Highly recommend that. We spotted an unreleased GM car of some kind. We spent a whole Saturday at Evo, hung out at the pool, went to Mass on Sunday, of course, and had a great time at the timeshare presentation with the very fun sales guy. We bought nothing, of course, but that's how we got the free hotel stay. And I had In-N-Out Burger for the first time ever. Wait a minute. Is that a thing? Is that one of the Rock controversies that he kept saying he never had In-N-Out Burger before, but said that like 3 times? I actually never had In-N-Out Burger before, and it was pretty good. The burger was good. The fries, I did not like the fries, but the burger was great. Anyway, if we had stayed in the hotel playing video games all weekend, it would not have been such a fun and refreshing trip. It was like an adventure. It was a great time. I guess the lesson here is, as fun as this computer stuff can be, don't let it rob you of great experiences. Thank you for watching, and I hope you come back for more videos later.